Borat isn't funny, and it's not because I was offended by the movies. In fact, I couldn't care less about the things that happened in the film. You want to take a dump on Trump Towers? Go for it. Offend some feminists? Why not? Offensive jokes and all that? I do not care. But I swear to God, I've never seen a comedy as unfunny as Borat and Borat the Subsequent Movie Film. Now, I never saw Borat back when it came out, so I have no nostalgia here to help. I'm coming in raw-dogged and ready to experience these movies on an even playing field. Just like everyone else, I've been completely bombarded by ads for the second movie, and remembering the hype train for the first, I was kinda excited for it. Then out of curiosity, I watched the David Dobrik Borat sponsored video thing, and I knew something was a little bit weird. I don't normally watch David Dobrik, so I just kind of assumed his content is always that awkward, but before we get too far into tearing these movies apart, the giveaway is over and the winners have been chosen. If you followed me over on my Twitter, you already know who won. But if you didn't, then here they are. I've already reached out to them personally. If you're new here and you see that subscribe button looks red, do yourself a favor and click it so you don't miss out on stuff like this in the future. Alright, back to the video. So Borat, Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan, which is the full name of the first film, is largely less scripted and more highly praised than the second movie, so we'll start there. So Borat is played by Adam Sandler's Kitty Diddler looking uncle, Sacha Baron Cohen. Can I say that? Is that defamation? I'm leaving it in. The movie follows Sacha Baron Cohen as he goes into real-world scenarios and acts like he's oblivious to not only social norms, but common sense. The movie is a mockumentary that begins in Kazakhstan. Borat is a top news reporter and was hired by the Ministry of Information to travel to the USA and learn how to improve Kazakhstan. So of course we start with a view of how lovely Kazakhstan is. It's a bunch of the same jokes over and over again, which are about rape, poverty, or being dumb. It's actually kind of a running theme for both of the movies that that's all the jokes revolve around. Again, I don't find this stuff offensive. I'm fully in the boat of free speech, especially when it comes to comedy. But these are just some of the lamest jokes I've ever seen.
My name is Borat. I like you. I like sex. It's nice.
And maybe it's a product of the times, because I'm sure Borat was one of the more controversial things to come out back in 2006. Not like today, where everything is in a competition to push the line as far as it can. The Boys, for example, if you haven't watched it, it wastes absolutely no time in unzipping its pants and presenting you with a throbbing, meaty, controversial sausage for you to admire in all of its greatness. Could be I'm just desensitized to these low-effort attempts to offend me. I'd say you can maybe make that argument for the first movie, but not the second movie. It came out this year, so in my mind that means it should be on par or better with the smut that comes out regularly. So anyway, Borat leaves Kazakhstan and there's a scene where he lets loose a hen on a subway. The camera angles are really weird because they're filming it secretively and no one really reacts in any kind of crazy way. It just seems like a flopped prank. Maybe it's something a YouTuber could do that would be passable, but for a full-length film it's just kind of lacking. Especially when we already had Jackass at that point, and a hen on a train is just kind of lame. We get a montage of him doing stupid stuff around the city, and it's basically just a dirtier version of that scene from Elf where Will Ferrell runs around New York. But in this one, our protagonist pretends to jerk off in public and shit on Trump Towers. On his journey to learn about American culture, Borat has a meeting with a comedy specialist who looks like the kind of guy you would want to avoid at a party because you know he's just gonna pull you aside and talk to you about his rock collection for the next 2 hours. Like, maybe it's just me. He just looks really boring for a comedy specialist. Back at his hotel, Borat discovers American television and falls in love with Pamela Anderson, which sets into motion the story arc for the biggest prank in this movie. It also sets the plot off in a direction of traveling across the United States. Borat's next meeting was with a group of feminists. He deliberately tries to offend them and it doesn't really work. They more or less just like stay silent and tread lightly. When they finally did say something, it was so boring, whatever the hell it was, that they decided to do a voiceover of Borat thinking about his love for Pamela Anderson in his head.
What you're saying is very demeaning. Do you know the word demeaning?
No.
We are saying to you
I could not concentrate on what this old man was saying.
He uses the same "smile a little bit" line twice, and both times it's obvious that they can see through his nonsense. That phrase is just way too specifically offensive to Western feminists for a character of his background to be repeating so regularly in that environment. Then we have a scene where Borat learns to drive, and again, the instructor is extremely professional and just underreacts to everything Borat throws at him. I don't know if they just one-shot these pranks or they redid them, because like, this is why prank shows do the same prank over and over and over. You're gonna get a lot of people that just couldn't be bothered to deal with your bullshit, and I feel like that is a lot of this movie. We see this immediately happen again when Borat tries to buy a car. He honeydicks this salesman for a good little while, makes jokes that the salesman is completely professional about, and then tells him that he's looking for something for $600. Next up, there's a scene where he goes and does a whole bunch of deliberately homosexual stuff, and then in the very next scene, he is told that that was homosexual stuff and freaks out because he didn't realize that that was homosexual stuff. Big laughs ensue. Then we come to what I think is probably one of the only funny bits in the entire movie. Borat turns the idiocy up to 11 and he goes on a news channel where he makes a complete fool of himself. But the whole time, the crew running the show can't stop laughing at what's happening, and it's really funny because it doesn't rely on toilet humor, it's just actual comedy. Just look at this weatherman losing his shit, it's hilarious.
Have me? What's your name?
Adrian, she's calling you to go over here.
Is that she?
Yes, I'm
well, nice.
That's good. Good.
Following this, we get a scene that is probably the only reason anyone can look at these films and say they're exposing stuff about society. Borat has a chat with some guy who I can only assume is running this rodeo, as he explains that he should probably shave his mustache so that he looks less like a terrorist. Whoa, crazy, America has racists. Who knew? Nowadays, like, I look at the States and I just assume it's like 30 to 40% racist, but I mean, I guess this was a revelation back in 2006. He goes out and sings a made-up Kazakhstan anthem to the tune of the American anthem, specifically to piss off the rodeo goers, and all they really do is boo him. There's a weird cut to where the horse falls over behind him, and then we move on. Next up, Borat gets a cultural lesson from some gangsters and then proceeds to drop the N-word in a hotel with his pants halfway down his ass. The hotel staff then did something that I never would have expected, and this just goes to show the validity of how good pranks can actually be. They kicked him out. I want to move on to the second movie, so I'm going to skip to the good bits. First up, we have the dinner scene. Borat is invited to a fancy dinner with what I can only describe as your typical white conservative individuals. He makes some jokes to offend them in various ways, and they all act unbelievably nice and accommodating. To me, it seems like at this point, the producers went, okay, this isn't wild enough, pull out the big guns, because then Borat excuses himself to go to the washroom and returns with his feces in a napkin. Even at this point, the hosts are extremely accommodating and politely teach him how to use the toilet. Then he proceeds to answer the door for his uninvited guest, a trashy hooker. They get run out of the house, and it's just kind of uncomfortable. Like, there's not really anything to laugh at, everyone's just kind of angry and confused. Anyway, next up we have the worst scene in both movies. He goes to an antique shop and falls not once, not twice, but 3 times in the same spot. It looks painfully fake, and even the shopkeeper looks like he knows this guy's taking a piss. They make a big deal out of not having enough money to pay, and then they try to trade him pubic hair, and then they continue on their journey. It's really stupid. So Borat and his producer have a fight because his producer jerked off to the magazine with Pamela Anderson on it, so they split up. During this part, Borat gets picked up by a bunch of frat dudes on the highway, and they chat a whole bunch of racist shit about whatever. I looked it up because I thought this part just seemed way too scripted, and the fact that they kept calling him Borak really didn't seem real to me. Anyway, as I thought, this part was more or less faked. Producers took these guys to a bar and got them super drunk, and then told them this movie would never be seen in America, and asked them to be overly offensive on purpose. Moving on, we reached the apex of the movie and the big prank they've been building up the whole time. Borat finds Pamela Anderson at a book signing in California and proceeds to try and kidnap her. All this highlights is how easy it is to put a celebrity in a bag. Like, she started sliding away from him and he still got it on her without security intervening. Then when he falls down, he just gets up and chases after her. This was probably terrifying for her, and again, it's not really comedic, it's just kind of uncomfortable to watch. Anyway, the movie wraps up in Kazakhstan, which has all sorts of improvements, such as stuff in the field of medicine, which doesn't even make sense because that was never a theme of this movie or any of the jokes at any point. All they did was just tape a plastic arm to a guy, and they were like, all right, this is a joke. Anyway, first movie's crap, moving on. So Borat Subsequent Movie Film, or Borat 2, is basically the same premise as the first movie. Borat is sent to America for a reason, and he offends people and acts awkward all along the way. This time around, the joke is that he's going to gift Kazakhstan's biggest star, a singing monkey, to Vice President Mike Pence. The movie runs through the background of how Kazakhstan now hates Borat for embarrassing them in the first movie. The only person who seems to like him is his daughter. Anyway, when Borat gets to America, people recognize him from the first film, so he has to go out and buy a whole bunch of disguises from a house Halloween shop, which immediately highlights why this kind of movie only needed to be made once. This movie relies a lot more on scripted interactions than the first movie did, and it doesn't do a great job at hiding how fake they are. For example, this fax guy who's used as a plot device for Borat's government to tell him what to do to move the story forward, you can actually see on the faxes themselves that in the first 2 times you see him, they're the same date, and then out of nowhere it changes, even though in the story he revisited the guy in the same day. Anyway, Borat's monkey died on its way here, but his daughter stowed away, so the new plan is that he's going to gift his daughter to Mike Pence. Fitting plotline, as the last few years have revealed that the world is run by pedophiles. Anyway, they go to get a cake as part of the gift, and they get a cupcake that has a baby on it. There's a joke about how girls can't have sweets in Kazakhstan, so Borat has to give it to her behind a dumpster, and then she swallows the baby, and now she has a baby inside her. You can see where this is going. They go to a super religious doctor's office and, using wordplay, insinuate that Borat, as the father, has put a baby in his daughter. The doctor seems unfazed by the knowledge that this baby's incestuous and proceeds to convince them not to kill it. Again, it doesn't surprise me to see this stuff. Like, maybe I just have a really cynical worldview, but this doesn't seem like, oh, whoa, no way he said that. So as Borat prepares his daughter for market in the movie, he takes her to like this rich person ball where he asks people prices of like what they would pay for her, and they actually answer. It's kind of messed up, to be honest. Like, this guy's daughter even says, "Dad, that's gross."
How much you think my daughter is worth?
$500.
Ooh, thank you.
You my best friend. Buddy.
That's all fucking gross.
They also do this fertility dance, which is just nasty. Everyone just looks away in disgust. Then they decide that Borat's daughter needs plastic surgery, so they go to get a consultation. In this conversation, the doctor basically says that he would make a sex attack on Borat's daughter if he weren't there. It's hard to tell how much of this interaction was just clever editing, though. We also see the breakdown of this kind of movie's structure when Borat has to painfully force the next plot line by outwardly expressing everything that he's going to do or needs to do, while this person just says yes a whole bunch.
I'm short $72.
And if we do not get you this, you cannot make the surgery anyway?
Right.
I only have 24 hours to get you $72?
Well, yes.
So because of the arbitrary ultimatum that Borat made for himself, he decides to leave his daughter with this babysitter who, for some reason, becomes pivotal in the plotline of the movie. Which is really strange because I thought this was an actor, but I looked it up and this woman was actually pretty much screwed over. Like, she was paid very little and she legitimately thought this person was going to be like sold into slavery. Which raises the question, how the hell did she know exactly what to say to move the plot of this movie forward? Anyway, she's like one of the nicest people in existence, and I heard there was a GoFundMe that happened after this that made her a ton of money, so good for her. So after being enlightened to the fact that Borat has been lying to her whole life, Borat's daughter goes to a feminist rally and tells them all about how she touched herself for the first time and how it was so great. You can tell this entire section was chopped together to make it look like certain reactions happened to things that they didn't. Like when she first arrives, look at this really awkward cut.
Part of that is the decline of Christianity in the United States.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Yes.
I want you to speak now.
See that? She just changes tone and position instantly. Anyway, Borat's daughter leaves him, and in the real-world timeline, this is right around the US going into lockdown. Borat bunks with some rednecks as they tell him about conspiracies, and they devise a plan on how to get his daughter back. After their quarantine, they go to a right-wing rally, and then Borat goes up on stage and sings a bunch of stereotypically bigoted things. I've rewatched these movies way too much at this point, and I still don't understand why this part needed to happen from a storytelling perspective. Anyway, the rednecks go tell Borat's daughter he's gonna be killed if she doesn't follow through with the plan, and she runs off to go do it solo. At this point, they already failed with Mike Pence, so now the plan's about Rudy Giuliani. And this is the part where it gets really f***ed up. Where do I even start with this? So the first time I was watching this, I was thinking, wow, this is way too intentionally uncomfortable to be real. But I decided to Google it, and it turns out this shit is real. They actually pedo-trapped Rudy Giuliani. So basically, in the movie, Borat's daughter is interviewing him as a news reporter with the intention to seduce him. He's acting overly friendly, she's acting overly friendly, there's drinks involved. Borat comes in and tries to cut things off early, dressed as her assistant, and it doesn't work. Then they retreat to the bedroom. Rudy sticks his hand down his pants and starts rubbing his wee little winky, and then Borat Borat jumps in and stops it. Because of the camera angles when they went into the room, I really struggled to see this as real, but you can look it up, it is. Rudy Giuliani claims he was just fixing his shirt, but I have seen this scene enough times now to conclude for myself that he was totally stroking his junk. Hands down the best thing to come from either of these movies, but again, it's not funny. So Borat returns to Kazakhstan and discovers that his government was using him to spread coronavirus around the world as revenge for getting laughed at in the first movie. Using his newfound knowledge of cell phones, he blackmails his president into reinstating his news reportership. He also changes Kazakhstan into a feminist nation and changes their holiday from hating Jews to hating Americans. And looking back, honestly, it seems like even less substance than what I thought, especially when it comes to the second movie. Like, it spends so much time on scripted interactions that it forgets the whole point of the movie is supposed to be these unscripted pranks. I noticed it a lot more the second and third time through that there really isn't a whole lot going on outside of the scripted interactions. I've had drastically mixed reactions when I told people that this is what I wanted to do for my next video, but I stand by my opinion. These movies just aren't funny. I enjoy cringe humor, I enjoy offensive humor, I enjoy pranks, but everything in this movie just misses the mark. In 2006, I would have been about 7 years old, which means it makes sense that everyone around me was talking about this being the funniest thing ever. You wanna know why? They were also 7 years old and had the humor of a child. These movies do provide an interesting perspective into things that like I would never be involved in. For example, this rich person ball. But I would honestly rather watch a Jackass movie or even a YouTube prank compilation. The one-time only pranks that go on way too long just for a predictable result really don't do it for me. He's going to a Mike Pence rally dressed as Trump trying to give away his daughter. I wonder what's gonna happen. Well, they're probably gonna get security on him immediately and escort him out while the crowd boos. He's gonna tell feminists to smile more? Oh, I bet they're gonna be angry with him. Man, I'm a prophet. Anyway, that's about it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, because surprisingly this is a very divisive topic. Some people love them, some people hate them. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button or I'll make a video about how unfunny you are. I'm joking, but hit that like button if you enjoyed the video and hit that bell button to be notified for future videos. I'm still figuring out some stuff with my schedule, so I'll see you either next week, the week after that, or the week after that. The weather means my work season's gone on a little longer than expected, but Wednesday is the day that I'll be posting videos, so expect one either next week or the week after. Anyways, stay heinous, you sexy mother...